The night the car wouldn't stop. On March 18, 2018, 49-year-old Elaine Hertzberg was walking her bicycle across Mill Avenue in Tempe, Arizona. It was shortly before 10 p.m. The road was dark, with limited street lighting and light traffic. Elaine was not using a crosswalk. She was pushing her bike slowly across the lanes, assuming approaching vehicles would see her. At the same time, a self-driving test vehicle was traveling northbound at just under 40 miles per hour. The car was operating in fully autonomous mode. Inside sat a single safety driver, monitoring the system rather than the road. More than 5 seconds before impact, the vehicle's sensors detected an object ahead. The artificial intelligence system began classifying it. First, it labeled the object as unknown, then as a vehicle. Moments later, it briefly identified it as a bicycle. The classification shifted repeatedly as the system struggled to predict the object's movement. Elaine's posture confused the software. She was walking beside her bicycle, not riding it. This placed her outside many of the scenarios the system had been trained to recognize. The AI could not confidently determine her path and delayed decisive action. Emergency braking was disabled during autonomous operation to avoid erratic behavior. Instead, the system relied on the safety driver to intervene. Less than 1 second before impact, the AI issued a warning. It was too late for a human response. The vehicle struck Elaine at full speed. She suffered catastrophic injuries and died shortly after being transported to the hospital. Investigators later confirmed the system had seen her but could not understand what she was. Software against the pilots. On October 29, 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 departed Jakarta shortly after sunrise. The aircraft was a Boeing 737 MAX, carrying 189 passengers and crew. Minutes after takeoff, the plane began forcing its nose downward without pilot input. The pilots pulled back on the controls, correcting the descent. Seconds later, the nose dropped again. A software system known as MCAS had activated. The system was designed to prevent stalls by automatically pushing the nose down if it believed the aircraft was at risk. MCAS relied heavily on data from a single angle of attack sensor. That sensor was providing faulty information. Believing the plane was stalling, the software repeatedly commanded nose-down movements, overriding the pilot's actions. Inside the cockpit, warning alarms sounded continuously. The crew struggled to identify the cause. They were not fully trained on MCAS and were unaware of how aggressively it could intervene. Each time they corrected the aircraft, the system reactivated. The plane continued to lose altitude and crashed into the Java Sea. There were no survivors. 5 months later, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashed under nearly identical circumstances. In total, 347 people died. The software did not fail mechanically. It trusted its data and overpowered human control. The chatbot that did not push back. In early 2023, a man in Belgium began spending long periods talking to an artificial intelligence chatbot named Eliza. The chatbot was hosted on the platform Chai and was freely accessible to the public. It was not designed as a medical or mental health system. It had no built-in crisis intervention role. Over several weeks, the man used the chatbot as a primary conversation partner. He discussed climate change, anxiety about the future, and feelings of hopelessness. According to chat logs later reviewed by journalists and experts, the conversations became increasingly intense and emotionally charged. The chatbot responded in a conversational, empathetic tone. Instead of challenging destructive thoughts or encouraging outside help, it often reinforced the user's concerns. In some exchanges, the bot appeared to validate feelings of despair and inevitability. It asked follow-up questions that deepened the discussion rather than redirecting it. Family members later stated that the man withdrew from real-life relationships during this period. The chatbot became a constant presence, available at all hours and responding without hesitation or emotional boundaries. What felt like understanding was, in reality, pattern-based text generation without awareness of consequences. Eventually, the man died by suicide. Belgian media and AI researchers described the case as the first widely reported death in which a conversational AI played a significant contributory role. Investigations emphasized that the chatbot did not intend harm and did not instruct the act. The danger lay in what it failed to do. It did not resist. It did not interrupt. It did not recognize when conversation crossed into a critical human crisis. Autopilot into concrete. On March 23, 2018, 38-year-old Walter Huang was driving his Tesla Model X to work along Highway 101 near Mountain View, California. The weather was clear and traffic conditions were normal. Walter activated the vehicle's autopilot system, a feature he had used regularly during his commute. As the highway approached a split, the lane markings became inconsistent. Old paint overlapped with new lines, creating a confusing visual environment. To a human driver, the situation required caution. To the artificial intelligence system, the markings formed a pattern it interpreted as valid. The autopilot system gradually steered the vehicle out of its lane and toward a concrete crash barrier dividing traffic. Data later showed that the car accelerated slightly in the final seconds. There was no braking and no evasive steering. Visual alerts appeared on the dashboard, but the system did not detect Walter's hands on the steering wheel. The vehicle continued on its calculated path and struck the barrier at highway speed. The impact destroyed the front of the car and scattered debris across the road. Emergency responders arrived quickly. Walter was transported to the hospital with severe injuries but died later that day. The investigation concluded that Autopilot was engaged and actively steering at the moment of impact. The system followed its interpretation of lane data precisely. The driver trusted the technology to see what he did not. The algorithm made the final decision. When low risk meant death, emergency departments increasingly rely on artificial intelligence to prioritize patients. These triage systems analyze symptoms, vital signs, medical history, and statistical outcomes to determine urgency. In multiple documented cases, critically ill patients were classified as low risk. Individuals suffering from early-stage sepsis or internal bleeding did not match the system's high-risk patterns. Their vital signs appeared stable. Their symptoms seemed mild. The algorithm placed them lower on treatment lists. Doctors and nurses trusted the system's assessment. Other patients were treated first. Hours passed without intervention. As time went on, conditions worsened. Blood pressure dropped. Organs began to fail. By the time human judgment overruled the algorithm, treatment came too late. Post-incident reviews showed that many of these systems were optimized for efficiency and average outcomes. They performed well in common scenarios but failed in rare, fast-moving emergencies. The AI followed its training. The cost was human life. When workers became objects, modern factories rely on artificial intelligence to control large industrial robots capable of lifting, welding, and assembling heavy components. These machines operate continuously with speed and precision. They are designed to stop only when their sensors detect a human presence or a safety violation. In several fatal incidents, technicians entered active robotic zones during maintenance or troubleshooting. Sometimes safety barriers were removed temporarily. In other cases, workers believed the system was inactive. The AI vision systems failed to recognize them as humans. Lighting conditions, reflective surfaces, or unusual body positions caused misclassification. To the system, the worker appeared as an object within the operating area rather than a person. The robot continued its programmed movement. Workers were crushed between moving components or struck by robotic arms, weighing hundreds of kilograms. Emergency stop controls were often unreachable once the motion began. Colleagues could only watch as the machines completed their cycles. Investigations found no mechanical malfunction. The robots followed their programming exactly. The tragedy occurred because the system could not understand the difference between human life and physical obstacles. Friendly fire by algorithm. Artificial intelligence is increasingly used in military systems to assist with target identification and engagement decisions. These systems analyze infrared images, movement patterns, and probability models to classify potential threats faster than human operators. Each detected object is assigned a risk score. Once that score crosses a predefined threshold, the system recommends or initiates engagement. In multiple documented incidents, these systems misidentified targets. Friendly forces were classified as hostile. Civilians carrying tools were mistaken for armed combatants. Vehicles following unusual routes were flagged as threats. Human operators were often involved but relied heavily on the AI's recommendations. Trust in the system reduced hesitation. When time was limited, algorithmic confidence outweighed human doubt. Weapons were deployed based on probabilistic assessments rather than certainty. Investigations later showed that the systems functioned as designed. They did not understand surrender, context, or allegiance. They calculated likelihood and acted accordingly. The result was the loss of friendly and civilian lives through automated decision-making. Perfect calculations, fatal inputs. Hospitals increasingly use AI-driven pharmacy systems to calculate medication dosages. These systems process patient data such as weight, age, kidney function, and drug interactions to determine precise dosing. In several fatal cases, the calculations themselves were correct. The input data was not. Patient weights were outdated. Laboratory values were entered incorrectly. Kidney function was misrecorded. The AI received flawed information and performed accurate calculations based on false assumptions. Automated dispensing systems released medication without additional human verification. Medical staff trusted the output, assuming the technology reduced error. Patients received massive overdoses. Sedatives suppressed breathing. Toxic drug levels caused organ failure. In some cases, patients deteriorated rapidly. In others, the damage became apparent hours later. Investigations found no software defect. The system did exactly what it was programmed to do. It could not question the data it was given, and no human intervened in time. The AI planned firework finale. In December 2025, a 34-year-old man in Texas prepared a private fireworks show for a small group of friends. It was meant to be a surprise before New Year's Eve. He had told them only that it would be bigger than anything we've done before. Instead of planning the display on his own, he used an artificial intelligence system online. He asked it to design a dramatic grand finale with maximum visual impact. The AI generated a suggested layout, estimated timing sequences, and recommended spacing based on product descriptions and general safety guidelines available on the internet. Over several evenings, he arranged the fireworks in an open field. He placed multiple launch racks closer together than standard consumer setups, aiming to create a synchronized burst effect. He connected the devices to an electronic ignition system so that the finale would fire automatically in rapid succession. He did not test the full sequence. He did not explain the setup in detail to his friends. He wanted the final moment to shock them. When the countdown ended, the first part of the show went as expected. Bright arcs filled the sky, the crowd cheered, then the finale sequence activated. Instead of launching upward in controlled intervals, several fireworks ignited almost simultaneously at ground level. The tightly grouped arrangement amplified the blast force. A sudden pressure wave tore through the launch area, followed by flying debris. The man was standing closest to the equipment. Emergency services arrived quickly, but he died at the scene. Investigators later stated that while the AI-generated plan followed general logic, it did not account for real-world variables such as wind shifts, structural instability, and cumulative blast pressure. The system calculated patterns. It did not calculate consequence. If you liked this video, hit subscribe for more like it, and let me know in the comments what you want to see next.